back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yeah!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes.
He's going for it. Oh, my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. Well, after the Union's long road trip through 3 different time zones, they are back this Saturday to take on the New York Red Bulls in a battle between first and second in the Eastern Conference. Well, joining me to preview this Saturday's match is a guy who has worked for 4 years for ESPN as a national correspondent. 2 of those were sideline reporter, including being the only ESPN media member allowed in MLS's bubble during the MLS's back tournament. He's also worked for Univision, covering NBA, NFL, MLB, MLS, NHL, both NCAA football and basketball, boxing, MMA, Liga MX, and European soccer, as well as 2 Super Bowls, 4 NBA titles, and 2 World Series. He is the current play-by-play commentator for the New York Red Bulls Spanish radio broadcast. He is Stefano Fusaro. Stefano, thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me. You just brought me back memory lane, saying all those things I used to cover. It gave me a little bit of a headache thinking about it, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's when I was reading that, the press release that the Red Bulls sent out when they announced you that you would be joining on last year, I was like, man, you have done a lot. And I remember I got to know you because of the MLS's back tournament, all your articles you're writing for MLS, all your interviews and everything. And then I know you did a ton of podcasts during that time because what else were you going to do in the bubble? And so I'm sure you're so tired of talking about MLS's back. So we won't talk about MLS's back. I like to let my listeners know how you got into the sport if somebody's coming on for the podcast for the first time. So Stefano, how did you get your start in broadcasting?
I mean, I started real young. Worked in a local television network in Miami, Florida, which is my hometown. While I was in college, getting a lot of experience as a sports producer, sports editor, obviously wanting to be on camera and become a talent, at that point, that was kind of the goal was to be an anchor. But obviously this business has changed quite a bit. And as you know, you got to become kind of a multifaceted content creator. And that's kind of that's where it all began, really. I've always had a passion for sports. I was working for Univision locally as a 19-year-old while I was at FIU at Florida International University. And I always said that my biggest decision I made was to not leave for college because I was going to go to Syracuse University and decided to stay home because I got this job as a video editor real young. And it's kind of really helped shape, the trajectory I did take. Sports has always been my passion, so I was always looking to do that. And soccer is something that has been kind of ingrained in my blood. My dad being from Argentina, it's something that I didn't have a choice. I was gonna like soccer. I was gonna love soccer, and I did. And it was natural to be able to. And I'm blessed to be able to cover a sport and to be around a sport that I love so much.
So how'd the whole Red Bulls situation come from? Because like I said, you were at ESPN prior, and then last year the Red Bulls announced that you would be joining a part of their digital team and then joining the Spanish broadcast. Yeah,
so just like a lot of things, right? During COVID, my time at ESPN unfortunately was cut a little shorter than I would like it because of COVID and because there was a lot of layoffs at ESPN, and it happened. Thanks to some of the contacts and networking that I'd done over the years working with ESPN, I was able to come here to where my wife is from here in the New Jersey area and get a job with the New York Red Bulls. And it's been a great class organization. I've been real blessed to be with them, and it's been fun. It's been fun to call games again. I hadn't done that in a long time, and to have the opportunity to do that and to be around these group of players with the Red Bulls and the staff that we have has been a blessing, and it's been fun. It's been a real good time to truly be around a team. I was for so many years around so many teams, but to be involved and work for a team and be there day in and day out and really see what these guys put in, it makes you appreciate it even more when you see good things happen on the field.
You look at Red Bull last year, they made that late push to get into the playoffs, getting that crucial point down in Nashville. And it's been talked about so much this year in the media, how they're the only undefeated team on the road in MLS with 5-0. And I know we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but this Red Bull team from the last time that the Union played them to what they currently are, not a lot has changed. I mean, Sean Davis, captain, he left. We all know that, going to Nashville. Fabio and Andrew Gutman's loans expired. They returned back to their respective clubs. Daniel Royer didn't see his contract picked up, but other than that, not a lot of change for the Red Bulls, but then they bring in players like Ashley Fletcher on loan from Watford, Tom Edwards back on loan from Stoke City, who was so crucial last year for their success in the back line, Lewis Morgan, who's been phenomenal, and we'll talk about him here, I'm sure, in a little bit, buying him from Inter Miami, Dylan Nealis signed from Nashville, replacing Kyle Duncan on the right side of that defense, and then Luinos signed from Liga Warsaw, who Jim Curtin today in his press conference mentioned that the Union had an option to buy him a couple seasons ago. They didn't take that up, and well, now he's in MLS with New York Red Bulls. So a lot of new pieces for New York Red Bulls, a lot of names maybe some fans don't know about, but man, these guys are all connecting and helping the Red Bulls have the season they're having so far.
Yeah, what's been interesting is that at the beginning of the season, there wasn't a lot of turnover. I mean, yes, you had Lewis Morgan, but that was really the only, Dylan Nealis, that was really the only new signings at that point when the season began. And since the season has started, they've really started adding, you said, Luquinhas. He's been, especially the last few games, just phenomenal. Scored another goal in the U.S. Open Cup just 2 nights ago in Washington, a few nights ago in Washington. And look, I think that the biggest thing with this team is their midfield depth now. They have about 7 players, and there's still a couple that are injured. We haven't even mentioned that Caden Clark has barely played a game. Wiki Carmona, someone who last year started to really come on late in the season, hasn't been able to play. So you're talking already, without 2 guys that are injured, they have about 7 guys in the midfield that can play multiple positions and can rotate. And it's been very, very positive for this team. They've been able to find goals and find a lot of different roles for players from that midfield. And I think that that's been the biggest asset that this team has. I know they want to find a little more success from their striker position. Patrick Lamala has been playing better. Ashley Fletcher's starting to really come into his own. Obviously they need to win at home. They've been so good on the road. They need to start getting some results at home. But I definitely think that the biggest thing with this team is their midfield depth, and it's really showing out lately of how they're able to create goals from the midfield. Now it's starting to be almost a regular basis.
Looking at the striker numbers, I mean, like you said, Ashley Fletcher, I know he has 6 appearances, 3 starts, no goals, but he's a player who has so much experience playing over in England with West Ham, I believe he played with at a time, on loan from Watford, played for Middlesbrough. So, I mean, this guy's played for multiple clubs in England, knows how to put the ball in the back of the net. I know when he was coming up through the academy over there, he was thought after a really high prospect, and yeah, I guess his career hasn't went the way that it's went, and New York Red Bulls now take advantage of, okay, look, of all the experience he has, now he comes on to MLS. Yeah, he doesn't have the goals, but like you mentioned, the last couple games that I've watched of the Red Bulls, yeah, he's starting to get used to MLS, the physicality, the speed of it, because I think that's a thing that a lot of new players aren't used to, is like, I think it's changing, right? But people, I feel like, still have that mindset of, oh, MLS is a retirement league. But you look, I mean, it's such a fast league. It's so physical. And I know just Daniel Gazdag, it took him a lot for him to really get adjusted to it with the Philadelphia Union, faster pace than the Hungarian league where he came from. And so it takes time for players, and I'm sure the goals from the striker position will come in for the New York Red Bulls, hopefully not this weekend against the Union, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But Lewis Morgan, I mean, 10 appearances, 4 goals, 2 assists, leads the team in key passes. I mean, everybody's going to focus on that hat trick that he scored against Toronto, which was a phenomenal hat trick, hitting him on the counterattack. But, he's been a great signing so far for New York Red Bulls. And like you mentioned, I remember early in January, early February, New York Red Bull fans on social media were panicking like, oh, of course, it's the same old Red Bulls. We're not going to bring anybody in. And then later on in the season, they bring people in. But Lewis Morgan, I mean, he's found new life since leaving Inter Miami. How have you made of his success?
I think it's been great. I think he's also been another player who's been versatile. They've used him as a winger. They've used him as a striker. They've used him as a right wing back. So they've definitely used him around. He's definitely been a positive player, a player that's kind of taken almost a veteran leadership role a little bit in the locker room as well, which I think it's been a pleasure to see for the staff, for them to see that. But he's definitely been a guy who I know they want more from him. They want a little bit more consistency out of him. I know that he's had some games, the last couple games, that maybe haven't been up to his level. I mean, still been good, but not where they want him to be. So I know they still want a little bit more consistency out of him, but he's been a player who's not only had an impact on the field, but also an impact off the field. Remember, this is one of the youngest rosters in the league as well. I mean, I talk about all this midfield depth, but they're mostly all 23, 24, 25 years old. They're all young players. Some even younger. Wiki Carmona's 18. So is Caden Clark is 19. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of young guys. So you needed someone with a little bit more experience, and he comes over and he's kind of filled that role. And you were mentioning the strikers before, and you were mentioning Ashley Fletcher. He doesn't have the goal yet. He did put that cross in the box against New England for that crazy own goal that gave him the win in one of the wildest soccer games I've ever seen in my life. It's some kind of thing that only happens in MLS.
Yeah.
But you were mentioning too, it's like, players take time to adjust. This is no longer, just a league that you can call a retirement league. I mean, I think we're seeing that. You're seeing players choosing to go to Europe, young American players who've chosen to go to Europe to some of the lesser leagues. And maybe they're realizing, hey, man, you know what? The MLS might still be more competitive than the Dutch league or the Belgian league or some of the small Hungarian league. You know what I mean? So I do think that we're seeing the players who think they're coming over here and going to have a nice old time in this, in this league are seeing that it's a lot more complicated and it's becoming a league. It's a lot more competitive and it has its own sets of challenges. But it is a league that can compare to some of the, mid-tier European leagues. I think we're seeing that.
For sure, and that's a great example of how, some younger Americans have went to these leagues. I mean, you look at Chris Mueller, who's now back with Chicago Fire. 15 appearances, I think it was, with Hibs in the Scottish League, only one goal, which was in a cup competition. And I know there was rumors that he didn't want to be in Orlando. He took the first offer he could get, but, he didn't even spend a year in Scotland before he was back in MLS. And Hibs were like, don't even pay us a transfer fee. We're just going to end the contract, and he joins on a free. I know Chicago had to pay fees and everything to Orlando, but he's a player that probably realized that, okay, well, maybe I had it pretty good in MLS, and I know he's a player that was in contention for the national team, getting called up and everything, and with the performances he had in Scotland, he probably wasn't going to get those call-ups, so he's back in MLS, and now he's back in his native Chicago, and he's a player that I think can thrive once again being in MLS.
Definitely, 100%.
But let's go ahead and talk about the New York Red Bulls away form. Like I said, I mean, this has been the big talk in the media where the Red Bulls are coming into Subaru Park as the only undefeated team left on the road, 5-0 perfect record with a goal differential of +10, 13 goals for, 3 goals against. They average 14.6 shots per game on the road, which is like mind-blowing because every time that we've seen teams come into Subaru Park against the Union, they're sitting back and they're waiting to hit the Union on the counterattack. They want the Union to have possession of the ball, but the Union don't want to have possession. They want the other team to have that. But to see the Red Bulls say, now we're going to go out and attack teams. 14 shots on the road is a ton, with 39% of those shots on target. Last year I looked at it, New York Red Bulls, they had to wait until the 6th game on the road to get their first win, which was a 2-1 victory over Orlando. What do you think of Red Bulls' form so far this season on the road?
It's interesting, right? Because they're not a team that really holds the ball. They're not a team that possesses the ball either. They're a team that plays off the break. They're very direct. When they get the ball, they don't really hold it. They're looking for long balls. They're looking for a good through ball. They're not a patient team by any means, but it's working for them. It gives them a ton of opportunities, and they pressure the hell out of the teams in front of them, whether they're at home or on the road. And, they do seem right now a lot more calm on the road. They seem like not a lot of pressure. We were at the game in Orlando. I traveled for the game in Orlando recently, and it was a 3-0 victory, and it was like almost a walk in the park. It looked like they were just enjoying their football, enjoying their game. And it was really interesting to see that they're not able to really bring that home. And that's typically not the recipe for success in this league. But it's incredible to see just how free they play on the road and how they're not varying from their tactics. They are going to let the other team hold the possession, and they want to attack. They want to counterattack. They want to steal, pressure them high up the field. And I don't expect to see anything different in Philadelphia this weekend.
I wanted to look at the road form last year and see how they did the last 5 games. They were 2-1-1 the last 5 games, including that playoff loss to the Union, where I know you can say they took it to extra time and it was a 0-0 game. But, I mean, both teams had chances in that game. I mean, they had results against Columbus, Cincinnati, and then that crucial draw, like I mentioned earlier, against Nashville, which sent them into the playoffs. I mean, this is something that's been building for a while, it seems like, for this team. And I feel like people in the media are kind of ignoring that fact. And another thing that stands out for me is that, they've scored 13 goals on the road, but they've got 7 different goal scorers on the road. Is this a team that has multiple players that can truly beat you?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's really their biggest asset right now, the midfield depth. They have guys that they can throw out. I mean, just alone, you could talk about 7 different players that have started in the midfield, from Luquinhas to Christian Cáceres. There's just Lewis Morgan. There's just so many players. Omir Fernandez has been one of the top players for me, in my opinion, for this team all season, whether he's scoring or assisting or just creating. And it really is a team that can hurt you from multiple different directions. Now, look, do they leave themselves open sometimes? Absolutely, because they're sometimes pushing forward so hard and pressuring high pressure so hard that they're going to have guys getting behind. Aaron Long has done a great job back there since returning from his injury, and Sean Nealis has done a great job at the back. But it is a team that in attack, just because of the amount of players that they have, and they use them because every game. I mean, it's almost impossible for one of those midfielders to play 90 minutes. Very few, maybe one of them a game will play 90 minutes and everyone else will be subbed out because they have that depth and they bring those players on. And they've had success. I mean, we watched it just in the U.S. Open Cup game a couple nights ago in D.C. when we were there, and same thing. I mean, someone who hadn't played in forever, Cameron Harper, who came over last year, hadn't played a ton, has been injured in and out of the lineup. He comes in and a beautiful assists, almost scores himself, and this is a guy who hadn't seen the field in forever. So it's like, they have those options in these players, and he was spectacular. So it is a team that could definitely hurt you with a lot of different players because, I think their biggest asset right now is that depth.
That's what I like about these Philadelphia Union and Red Bull games is because, you're always going to get high intensity from both of these teams. They play a similar style. They try to turn you over in the midfield and then try to hit you on the counterattack. I mean, you talked about it, that's just the way that the Red Bulls play. And I think we've seen enough matchups over the years between these two teams. Like, everybody's going to go into Saturday knowing what to expect. You go ahead and look at the last 4 games, including the playoff game. I mean, neither of these teams have scored more than 1 goal. The Union are on a 5-game winning streak at Subaru Park in all competitions against Red Bull. But, the last of those 3, I feel like the Red Bull could have easily won those games. So, I mean, the margins are so narrow where, one small mistake, it's going to cost you. And, the Red Bull were unfortunate not to get a goal in the playoffs against the Union with Klimala on that 1v1. Andrew Blake came up with a huge save. I know Sergio Santos had an opportunity where he cut the ball back to Shabelka, who hit it over the bar before we went into extra time. So, I mean, it's, like I said, just fine margins between these two teams every time they play. And I'm not going to expect anything different this Saturday when they meet. And I guess Union fans get good news because Jose Martinez was able to play Tuesday night against Orlando City in the Open Cup. Jim Curtin said the MRI came back clean on his knee. And then today in Jim's press conference, he said Mikel Ura did some high-intensity training and practice, could be an option on the bench this weekend. So you probably see Corey Burke, Julian Kranza, I would imagine. Sergio Santos, I know, has been battling injuries. I don't think he's fully fit. Jim hasn't given us an update on that, but that's something to keep an eye on, who's going to start up top for the Union this weekend. While the Red Bulls, you mentioned it, Caden Clark's been out injured a couple games with an injury. Starting regular center back Andres Reyes had surgery in January to repair a Jones fracture. Aaron Long got injured Tuesday, even though I know Gerard Struber said that he's day-to-day, I believe today I saw. So we'll see if he plays against the Union. And then Christian Cáceres, he'll miss this game because of the yellow card accumulation. But you mentioned there's a ton of depth in the midfield for the Red Bulls. So how big of a loss is that going to be? I think it's going to be a little bit of a loss because he's such a warrior in the midfield for the Red Bulls. He's a phenomenal player, and I think they'll miss out a little bit, but you were just talking about the depth. So how much will they miss it? I don't know. We'll see. But, how's this team been able to step up defensively with regular outside backs, Andrew Gutman and Kyle Duncan gone, and then, like I mentioned, Andres Reyes being out for the whole season?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, look, John Tolkien has stepped up and made that left back position his. I don't think there's any question that there's pretty much no competition for him for that left back position. Could be a problem long term, but he's really kind of owned it and has been probably one of the top players that the Red Bulls have had at that left back position. Right back, yeah, it's been a kind of a mixture of Tom Edwards and Dylan Nealis, and they've really stepped up and played well. And as far as the center backs are concerned, look, I think everyone kind of expected it to be Aaron Long and then a kind of a rotation between Sean Nealis and Andres Reyes. I think that still may be the case when Reyes comes back. As of right now, Sean Nealis has been a rock in the back. He's been, almost more reliable than Aaron Long, just because Aaron Long has been coming back from an injury, a long injury, and it's taken him, maybe, he's still playing well, but it's taken him just a little bit to defensively to kind of get everything under him. But, they've both played and they have formed a partnership where it's become very difficult to score against the Red Bulls. And look, have they given up a couple goals here and there? Yeah, but they haven't given up a lot. And I think you can see that by the stats. And there's really nothing else to say except the fact that Aaron Long and Sean Nealis have stayed healthy, and they've been absolute rocks and a great combination with those two back there. They've also played 3 center backs, and Tom Edwards has played center back as well back there. So it's really about versatility and depth for this team, and really squeezing as much as they can out of the players that they have and making them play and helping them play in different positions all over the field. And that's really been where they've been able to have success, even though they have had some key players be out with injury.
I mean, it's no surprise when fans go ahead and look and see that the Red Bulls were leading the league in tackles, won, pressures, successful pressures. I mean, you expect that from a Red Bulls team. I feel like the last couple of years, they've always led in those categories. But the one thing, I mean, you talked about it, how, they're not really getting too much impact from the strikers putting the ball in the back of the net. But even though they've only scored 16 goals, I mean, they're second in shots attempts in the league with 153, first in shots on target, 59. I mean, there's a team that could have so many more goals if it wasn't for a spectacular goalkeeping from teams that they faced already this season. What have you made from that? Just seeing, typically I've looked in years past where the Red Bulls at the end of the season, they're in the middle of the pack for shots on target, but this year they're in first in shots on target with 59. I mean, the Red Bulls, 16 goals. Okay, it's fifth, I believe, in MLS, but they've had opportunities to have a lot more goals if it wasn't for good goalkeeping, but I'm just so shocked to see that their shooting percentage is so high up there.
Yeah, they're relentless. It's a relentless style of attack. It really is. It's and it has made for interesting viewing. Do they need to have better finishing from their strikers? Absolutely. I think that's the difference. I think that's the difference between why their shot attempts is so high and their goals are high, but could be higher. And I do think it's because of the finishing from the striker position that's kind of caused that stat to go the way it has. But at the same time, again, it's a team that's absolutely relentless, and they're going to shoot. Some of the shots, you ask yourself, why'd you shoot it? But, it's better than having a team that doesn't shoot enough. And I think that's where this team is really shown out. It is a relentless attack, a team that will pressure you and run you into the ground and really try to put all the defenders under pressure. It's very difficult to play out of the back against the Red Bulls. Again, it's a team that is definitely still a work in progress, but they are showing that this is how they're going to play. They're going to shoot. And I think eventually they're counting on we're going to have a lot more of these 3-goal games because they're just shooting so much and attacking relentlessly so much. Could leave themselves open, but they're going to score.
It's like once you get that first goal, then teams are going to have to come out and attack you, and then that's when you hit them on the counterattack. And like you said, you'll get more 3-goal games, 4-goal games. For me, though, this weekend, my 3 keys to a victory for the Union, I've been talking about this the last couple of podcasts. One, the Union have to build on the leads because it's been 4 straight games now that the Union have had the lead, and they've yet to build on that lead. They score a goal, and then they give up a goal. They're second in MLS in allowing equalizing goals with 5, while New England lead the league with 6, while they've held the lead in 9 out of 10 games, while only winning 5 of those. So the Union have to find ways, if they score the first goal against Red Bulls this weekend, how do we get the second goal? Because that's something that they've been struggling with, and Jim Curtin's talked about it, said, we've talked about it, we're aware of that, and so we'll see if the Union get the first goal this weekend against Red Bulls. Can they go out and get that second goal before the Red Bull get the first? Because I do believe if the Union score a first goal, the Red Bull are definitely going to score on the road because they've proven that they score on the road every time they go out. 2, win the midfield battle. Both teams are going to force each other to go out wide. Both teams like to play through the middle, but, the middle is going to be congested. You talked about all the depth. So it's like once one person's been ran into the ground, they're going to bring somebody else in the midfield and then pressure you just as much as that last person. So I always love the midfield battle between these two teams. It sucks that Christian Krasaris isn't going to be there for Red Bulls, but you sound pretty high up on their depth. So I think we're still going to get battle in the midfield. And then number 3, you got to find ways to get in behind. Like I mentioned, Patrick Klimala had a chance to win the game for Red Bulls in the playoffs with getting in behind. Andre Blake came up with a big save. Sergio Santos got in behind, squared it to Shibelko, hit it over. So those are my 3 keys to a game. Before I let you go, Stefano, what are you looking for in this game?
I mean, you said it, the midfield battle, right? We haven't even mentioned Frankie Amaya, who's probably been one of the
Phenomenal.
best midfielders they've had this season, playing in that kind of, stopper role, that kind of, holding midfield role. I think the midfield. I think Jose Martinez, for as good as the Red Bulls have been this season on the road, sometimes at home, I think they've yet to face, a physical presence in the midfield like Jose Martinez. He's always been a guy who's given them a lot of trouble, who's been I remember last season, I feel like when we played Philadelphia, Venezuela was just coming off of a qualifier, and they had just played together, Cáceres and Jose Martinez. And Jose Martinez crushed Christian Cáceres with a foul, just a bone-bruising tackle. And I was just like, man, they were just friends like 2 days ago playing for Venezuela. And I was just like, yeah, that's Jose Martinez for you. So I do think it's going to be a battle. I think we're going to see he's going to be a very important figure for Philadelphia. Andre Blake, we know if he gets a couple saves early on a couple of shots that the Red Bulls believe should be goals, that will frustrate the Red Bulls. I know that. Look, I don't expect this to be an easy game. This is probably going to be the most difficult game the Red Bulls have played this season. It's always seems to be a battle with Philly. And so I do expect that. But definitely being able to get in behind with either Klimala or Fletcher, I think will make the difference. Luquinhas has proved that he can find these strikers. He has proved that he can find them in good spots, or if not, score himself. But I do think that the Red Bulls need some goals from their striker position. If they can get one, can open the floodgates a little bit against a solid defensive team. But again, I think the midfield battle, trying to get around Jose Martinez with our midfielders, with the Red Bulls midfielders, I think is going to be very key in this game.
Couldn't have said it any better, and I'm looking forward to this game against Red Bulls. Always entertaining. Good luck on the call this weekend. I'm sure your listeners are always enjoying your commentary. You're giving them phenomenal insight into the game, what's going on the field. But for my listeners who aren't following you, don't know where to find you, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter, S_Fusaro. That's S_FUSARO. I'm on there, active sometimes, not as active other times, but I'm always active around Red Bulls games and leading up to games and stuff like that. So we'll get always talk. You hit me up, we can chat soccer, we can chat whatever you want, and I'm always around. Big shout out to your boy Jim Curtin, because one of the favorite coaches to cover during the MLS bubble and throughout my years covering MLS. Best shoe game in the MLS for coaches. I give him that. So props to Mr. Coach Curtin.
Man, it's what everybody talks about, the way he's dressed and his shoes, and then he gets himself a Nike deal. I mean, he's living the life, right? So in his hometown, a cult hero, the only successful Philadelphia team right now. And man, I mean, what a guy, what a life he's living. But Stefano, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on to the show, and I really appreciate it. And best of luck the rest of the season.
Same to you guys. Take care.
Yeah, and with that said, if you guys aren't following the podcast on social media, follow @FreeKickPod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And before I end the show, there's been a lot of talk on social media about, the Union didn't care about the U.S. Open Cup. It's evident by the lineup that they threw out there against Orlando. And, I do... I do see where people are coming from, right? And I know a lot of people wanted the Union to rest their starters against LAFC and then go for it in the Open Cup. And, I'm sure it does sting a little bit for Union fans when you look. Throughout the Open Cup, a lot of teams went for it with their regular lineups. You look at Atlanta United in Nashville last night, I believe it was, where they're starting a full 11, and they go into extra time and they go into penalties. And Union fans, wanted to see our best 11 out there on the field. And, it was always going to be tough. This stretch was going to be tough always for the Union. To go out to L.A., like I mentioned, 3 different time zones. You go from Nashville, different time zone. You go out to L.A., different time zone. Then you come back to the East Coast, a different time zone. I mean, it's a lot of traveling in 3 days, where we're away from Philadelphia. And so... Jim had to make a choice, You can't play your starting 11 in all 3 games. And Jim said after the game against Orlando, he said, the players that we started tonight, they earned the minutes. That's why they were out here. It's not like we put a lineup out here to lose. These players have been pushing all season long to earn these minutes. And that's why we saw a lot of the homegrown players out there. That's why we saw Stuart Finley out there, because Jim said that the players owned it. And whether or not you guys want to believe it, that's up to you. I think if I was Jim, I get why he started the 11 against LAFC, because at the end of the season, that game could be crucial coming down to Supporters Shield, to you hosting a playoff game at home. And I know you can say the same thing for all of those games that you play during the season, but LAFC are going to be up there all season long with the Supporters Shield standings, and you only play them once, and so you want to go for it. So I get why Jim Curtin played his regular starting 11 against LAFC. You go ahead and look. I mean, the players that he started against Orlando City, they're not. I feel like some people on social media are acting like the players that he started are scrubs. They're not good players, because people weren't saying that against New York City when these players were starting. People aren't saying that when Jim Curtin isn't making substitutions. People are complaining on social media saying that, oh, Paxton Aronson needs to play more. He needs to come in sooner. Jack McGlynn needs to play more. He needs to come in sooner. Quinn Sullivan needs to play more. People aren't saying that when Jim needs to make substitutions, but because Jim Curtin starts them, now people are complaining about that. And I'm okay with the approach that Jim went out there against Orlando. I see 100% why people said that, oh, well, Jim's throwing in the towel. And I get it, right? Jim Curtin says when you substitute 4 more players, the data shows you're going to lose a game. He made 7 changes to his lineup against Orlando City. I get that, right? Especially a guy who loves analytics, where he said the game prior, leading up to the LAFC games, you don't want to rotate players more than 3 players. You don't want to rotate more than 3. And he rotates 7 players. And saying that, he's a guy who, like I mentioned, loves data. We've talked about that multiple times on the show. And, the data proves to be right once again. But my whole thing is this, right? So I think ultimately I would have sat the regular starters against LAFC. I would have went for it in the Open Cup. Not saying he didn't go for it. He 100% went for it with the players that he started, because those players are good enough. I don't buy into some people saying, oh, the lineup he put out there weren't good enough to win against Orlando. No, those players are definitely good enough. The one thing that doesn't play to those players' advantage is they haven't played together at all this season. I know they've been getting game time with U2, but have they played against another quality MLS team together? No, they have not. And so that hurts a little bit. But my big thing is, right, you have a chance to win a trophy. It takes 5 games and you can win a trophy. And what does winning the U.S. Open Cup get you? It gets you a Champions League spot. And you're banking on now either winning the Supporters Shield or MLS Cup. And I don't know about you guys. Do you guys feel confident that the Union could win MLS Cup this season? I know we're 10 games into the season, but if the players were to start now, would you feel confident that the Union are going to win MLS Cup? Where you look, I mentioned that so many times, where they can't build on their lead. 4 straight games now. Could it be 5 this weekend against New York Red Bulls? I think there's a really strong possibility. You have 5 games. That's all you need to win a trophy, where you play a 34-game season, and people talk about the schedules being unbalanced. There's a chance, you can take care of your business and everything, but LAFC have an easier schedule than you, and they're going to go ahead and run away with it. Seattle, I know they've been slouching, but what if they get hot? Their schedule, people can say, is easier than the Union. So I don't know, 5 games, that's all it takes. And you had a chance to win a trophy. We've seen the Union in 3 finals in the past, and the roster the Union currently have is a lot stronger than any of the rosters they took in those 3 previous finals. And my big thing is, I 100% think Kai Wagner is gone in the summertime. And why? How do you know how the season's going to go if Kai Wagner leaves, when Kai Wagner leaves? Let's say things just spiral out of control once Kai Wagner leaves in the summertime, if he leaves. And now you don't win Supporters Shield, so there goes CCL. You struggle to get into the playoffs. You don't host a game at home where you're usually dominant, odds are you're probably not going to get in CCL. But if you took your starting 11 into the game against Orlando, 5 games, that's all it took. With Kai Wagner, mind you, still in the roster, Jose Martinez still in the roster, you could have won a trophy. And it's a trophy where, I see fans are 50-50 on. Some of them are like, yeah, I want this trophy. Some are like, oh, yeah, it's not important. For me, it goes MLS Cup, CCL. It goes MLS Cup, it goes Supporter Shield, CCL, US Open Cup, and then Leagues Cup. I still think the US Open Cup is a respectable trophy. I think it's a big trophy. I think it's a trophy that teams should fight for. They should take serious. But, like I mentioned, I get why Jim Curtin made the decision that he did. He was always going to have to rotate his squad. It was just a matter of how was he going to rotate it, what game was he going to rotate it, and he chose to do it against Orlando. But Jim Curtin had full confidence that the group of players he put out there could have got the job done. And, just reading fans' reaction on social media, even before the lineup was announced, Jim Curtin announced it a day prior that, there was going to be 7 changes to the lineup with all the homegrown players playing in that game. And fans were upset with that on social media, saying, oh, he's throwing in the towel. The Union stand no chance against Orlando. And it's like, some fans didn't even give these players a chance to prove that they could beat Orlando. And I know that they didn't, but, what if? And we won't say in the what if moment, but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully fans get over it. I would have sat my starters against LAFC, like I said, went for it in Orlando with my regular 11, but what is what it is. I think the Open Cup would have been a great competition to continue to get your young players experience against, better teams than second teams, but the Union get knocked out against Orlando, and now we got to wait until next year for the Open Cup, and you guys will say hopefully they put out a better squad and take the Open Cup more serious. I think they did take it serious, but we'll just leave it at that. But hopefully we'll get a good game against the Red Bulls this weekend. Hopefully the Union can finally win a game at home. It's been a little bit. Montreal, I know, they drew, and then they won the game prior to that. But I don't know, it feels like it's been forever since we'd last been home, and hopefully we get a good game. Hopefully no injuries, no red cards, and hopefully it doesn't rain too hard this weekend. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.